What's up guys, my name is Ace, and one thing I am very happy to see with Modern Warfare 3 is the detailed stats tab. This is once again back, and this time around it's quite comprehensive as well. You can see a lot going on here with everything from like damage to range, fire rate, recoil control, mobility, accuracy, and handling. But how accurate are these stats? Can you rely on them 100%? Well, it turns out for many of them, no, you can't be trusting them 100%. And it's not that they're necessarily wrong, although there are a couple that are just straight up wrong, and I'll be pointing those out throughout the video. But more often than that, what you'll find is these are just not quite complete. They don't paint the full picture. You don't get quite enough context there to really be able to judge what's going on with your gun. However, in saying that, many of these stats are perfectly accurate and you can definitely trust them 100%. So we're going to be going through each of these categories in today's video, and I'm going to be sharing my experiences with the detailed stats stated in the game versus my actual testing with the game, which gives more accurate data. And let's start this off with damage. In the detailed stats tab, they show you 3 different damage values: your headshot damage, your upper torso damage, and your lower torso damage. And keep in mind, these are your damage values only at close ranges, or in the maximum damage range for the gun. It doesn't show anything beyond that, so we're already quite limited when it comes to our damage values, but it can at least give you an indication of its potential power, assuming you're keeping yourself up close and personal. But more important than that, depending on the gun, there can be more than just 3 body multipliers with different damage values, and therefore, again, this doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture. And let's have a look at some examples, just looking at 3 different SMGs with totally different multipliers. With the first one, we've got the Striker, and this one actually works pretty much as you'd expect based on looking at the detailed stats. So our headshot damage, that lines up perfectly. Our upper torso damage also lines up perfectly, although it also applies anywhere in the arm, including all the way down to the hand. You're going to be dealing upper torso damage with the Striker, and that's not really indicated anywhere with this damage tab. And then we have our lower torso damage, which applies everywhere to the lower torso as well as anywhere on the legs and feet. So with that one, things are looking at least reasonably accurate. That's pretty much what you'd expect, although it was a bit surprising to see that upper torso damage also applies to the arms. Now let's move on to a totally different SMG, the WSP Swarm. In this case, once again, headshot damage, that lines up perfectly. This always seems to line up perfectly. Then our upper and lower torso damage values in the menus are both 30, and that holds true in-game as well, and that also applies anywhere to the arms and hands. However, we do have a different damage multiplier here that's not stated in the menus at all, and this is our leg damage, which is 27. So the detailed stats don't give you any indication that you can deal as little as 27 damage, but it turns out you actually can if you hit them in the legs. And now let's move on to the third example, just to show you that there's vast differences between guns, even though you don't get to see those differences with these detailed stats. This one is with the AMR-9, and our headshot damage lines up once again. Our upper torso damage lines up, but this time it only applies to the upper torso. It doesn't apply to the arms like it did with the Striker. And our lower torso damage is what also applies to the arms and our lower torso. And then on top of that, we have leg damage as well with this gun, and that's not stated anywhere in those detailed stats. So hopefully this illustrated my point here that while the damage values technically are accurate, they don't paint the full picture and they don't necessarily give you a perfectly accurate indication of where those body multipliers are going to line up, especially when we start including arms and legs. Now in that same tab, we have target flinch. I assume this is accurate. That's something I will have to do more testing on as time goes on. I will be having a dedicated flinch video, but as far as I can tell, you can trust that value. Now let's move on to the range values. And again, these values are perfectly accurate, but they don't necessarily paint the full picture. And let's just look at one example here. That's all that's required in this case. With the Striker, we can see our effective damage range is 9.7 meters. And based on all of my tests, this always lines up with our maximum damage range. And then we also have our minimum damage range, which is our final range drop-off point based on all the testing that I've done. And you can see, based on my hand testing, I plotted all of my range drop-offs, and these 2 values were perfectly accurate every single time I tested with all of the assault rifles, SMGs, LMGs. It's always perfectly accurate. So these values are correct, and they can be used to give you a general indication of the power of the gun. However, it doesn't paint the full picture. We're missing a couple range drop-offs with the Striker 45, for instance. And those are important values to know as well, because with our 5-shot kill range, for instance, on the Striker, it doesn't give you any indication of how long that would be with the detailed stats, but it turns out it's about 19 meters. So those are our range values. You can trust them, just know that it doesn't paint the full picture. Then when it comes to bullet velocity, I did do some spot checks on this at least, and it's perfectly accurate every time. So I would say you can trust those bullet velocity values completely. Next, let's talk about rate of fire values. And when it comes to regular full auto guns, you can trust these completely based on every one that I've tested so far. It is perfectly accurate. However, when it comes to burst guns, this is just completely wrong. Like, these values mean nothing for burst weapons. It's not even the average of a total magazine being fired or anything like that. So with the DG58, for instance, in-game it states our rate of fire is 209.8 rounds per minute, when in fact, the rate of fire within each burst is around 900 rounds per minute, and then we've got a roughly 100 millisecond burst delay, and none of that is expressed anywhere in these detailed stats. Additionally, something I noticed, when you put the aftermarket kit on the MWIII, which turns the gun into full auto, you would think that would at least give us an accurate fire rate for full auto mode, and that's not the case at all. In the menu, it says our rate of fire is 206.9 rounds per minute, when in reality, with this aftermarket kit, it's 855 rounds per minute. So definitely keep that in mind with rate of fire. It's accurate for full autos, but don't trust it at all for burst guns. After that, we've got recoil control. And what they've done with recoil control here is they've made it so everything just defaults to 1, and then this will change based on the attachments you put on. So this is excellent for your attachment selection because you can see exactly how much an attachment will hurt or help various areas of your recoil control. However, since they do this, you obviously can't use this value to compare different guns to each other. So I think this still serves a great purpose for creating your builds, you just can't use it for comparison's sake. And as long as you understand that, then this is totally fine. Next, for our accuracy stats, we have hipfire spread, min and max, we have our flinch resistance, and our tactical stance spread. This all appears to be completely accurate. You can trust these completely as far as I've seen. And it's a similar story with mobility. All of these stats are accurate, although I wouldn't mind seeing an extra decimal point added here, just for a little bit more accuracy, because there is a slight but noticeable difference between like 5.25 meters per second and 5.34 meters per second. But with the way this is balanced, those will all round to the same value and they will appear to be identical. And then finally, this brings us to the handling tab, and our aim down sight speed is always accurate based on all my tests, so you can trust that one fully. Our reload quickness is technically accurate, but this is showing our reload time for the total reload animation, which isn't necessarily representative of the true reload potential of a gun. Because any final animation after that magazine is seated and it shows that your magazine is full on the bottom right portion of your heads-up display, any animation after that is useless and it can be canceled out with no penalty. So just an example here, with the striker, our reload quickness in the detailed stats is 2.6 seconds, but our reload add time, which is the reload potential, this is 1.39 seconds, significantly faster than that. And therefore, at least for me, I'm basically just going to ignore this reload quickness stat because it doesn't define our reload potential with that gun. Next, after that, our sprint to fire speed is accurate, but it's missing something important, which is our tactical sprint to fire speed. That's not displayed anywhere on here, so this is something you'll just have to get from my gun guides, since they simply don't display it. And then finally, we have our swap speed, which does appear to be accurate as well, and you should be able to trust that. So there we go. That covers all of the sections of our detailed stats. Like I said, most of these are accurate, but many of them just don't paint that full picture. They require a little bit more information, a little bit more context to be understood fully. And just remember, if you're looking at a burst gun, don't even look at that rate of fire value. It doesn't mean anything. And with that, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Overall, I've got to say I'm very impressed with these detailed stats, despite the fact that they don't tell us absolutely everything. I think they're at least good enough to really get you on your feet without having to watch YouTube videos or anything when it comes to your attachment selection, for instance. And that's great news. Now, for those of you guys that want that more detailed information, my gun guide series will be booting up. Hopefully, I'll have the first episode within the next week or so. And I'm going to try to blast through these faster than I ever have in the past. I've already got a huge head start on my testing. All of my testing is already done for the SMGs and the assault rifles. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that series. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the current state of the detailed stats in Modern Warfare 3? Are you generally happy with the stats that they're providing? Do you feel like this is enough, or would you like to see even more? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.